have leftovers. I'll make rice.
And that's how we started the podcast. It's almost as if we talk a little bit before I hit record sometimes.
I'm making Archon the Cruel's flame roasted halfling chili for dinner tonight.
Heroes Feast, the D&D cookbook. Maybe that's what we should have just talked about for an episode at some point.
Yeah, you said we were going to do videos of it.
Well, yeah.
Other people are doing it. I think we should.
Well, yeah, we will. I don't know. We got to pick one to do.
Now that you quit your job.
Whoa. Yeah, that's true.
Now I'll have time.
Yeah.
I didn't quit my job, though.
But your job is cooking, so you can just do it at work.
Yeah, maybe my boss will just let us film it there.
Just change
honestly.
the menu. Whoa, that'd be nuts. Actually,
that would
do
be
it
so
in a
much
big
easier.
Kitchen?
Yeah.
Whoa. All right.
Anyway.
Maybe we can find the track. Which is
that's exactly
related to the topic we're going to talk about. So in the last episode, we answered the biggest problems of this big community post I made asking for problems, and hundreds of people responded. And the big one was finding that middle ground between railroading, like linear style play, and open world sandbox play. Like, how do you feel prepared enough without driving the players a certain way? Oh, well, and we also talked about player engagement. And both of those things seem to relate really well to another question that stood out here. Grace, do you want to read this comment that we're going to dig into here?
This comment comes to us from Derek Barnett, or perhaps Barnett, or Barnett.
Maybe it's Derek Barnett.
Barnett. Getting my players to make choices on their own without me having to railroad them. This is what caught my eye, and I will discuss it after I finish reading the comment. Without me having to railroad them towards the next event/quest/set piece/encounter. I've run a few sandbox campaigns over the years, and it always seems like in a world of infinite possibilities with several dangling quest threads at their fingertips, players will stand around waiting for something to happen to them. So, the thing that caught my eye was Derek says that they feel like they have to railroad their players when they're not making choices. Well, here's the thing. If your players are not using their agency, it's not railroading if you push them toward a plot.
Yeah, I agree.
I want to come up with a new term for that. I want to call it shopping carting. Grocery carting.
When you're pushing?
When you are pushing your players toward a plot because they refuse to make a decision, it's grocery carting.
Not bad. I feel like we may be able to come up with something better. But I'm glad you brought that up, because also after making a video about that idea of like finding that middle ground, a lot of people commented well, first of all, there was confusion. We talked about this, which was kind of funny, because I do just think of a linear game as a railroaded game. But other people were kind of making the distinction of like, no, railroading is when you just say no to everything except your plan. But I feel like that is linear. I don't know. The point is, people were kind of alluding to this, and some people directly said campaigns are more nuanced than just calling them railroad or sandbox. So the idea of, having something in between and giving it a name is kind of an important step for D&D in the future. Like, it should be more than just this binary.
I still like the sandbox on rails, Matt Colville's sandbox on rails. They're playing around in the sandbox while the sandbox careens down the path of the linear track that I have set in motion of the overarching plot. Yeah. Infinite possibilities and players who can't make choices.
Yeah, I mean, the way they worded it was really great, like infinite possibilities with several dangling quest threads, because that's the key. When we were first reading this and it was like, oh, infinite possibilities, well, of course they didn't choose anything. That's how you're supposed to ever choose anything when you could do anything. But Derek says that they are dangling some quest threads, and they still won't pick something until it happens to them.
I think that might be kind of a bad habit some players might pick up of they always expect something big to happen that is just glaring in their face. You are supposed to do this. But at the same time, they want to complain when there's only one thing to do.
Right.
So
well, maybe it's funny because he doesn't say his players have a problem with this. You know?
Yeah,
It
I'm not saying that like his
Yeah.
players complain about having only one thing to do, but thinking something grand has to happen to start a plot, where the plot could actually be the dangling thread is just like you see a strange man slip down an alley, or
Yeah.
this strange looking ring in the general store, like
Mhm.
something tiny and small that then snowballs into something much larger.
Yeah. I think what he kind of describes is a problem I've seen where, yeah, just requiring in a very much like, you're a wizard, Harry. You have to be like this important character that has to do something. So if it's the whole party, like needing to be shoved around too, like that is kind of hard because they all then have to have things that they have to share bonds.
Yeah, and like they all have to have a reason for doing the thing. In one of my games, the whole party is kind of involved with getting the one character's story straight because assassins are chasing after all of them right now just because of the one guy.
Okay.
So, I mean,
I like that.
I think that was pretty good on my part. But
It is, yeah. Yeah, because it's like, okay, the one character has this thing, and it's not like they needed it. You came up with that as a cool thing. Well, it was collaborative, I guess.
Yeah, they said they were on the
Yeah.
run, and
Created what
they
were
didn't really
running
know
from.
who from
Yeah.
at the time, and then I came up with it and explained it to them. And,
Yeah, but found a way for the whole party to like have to handle this problem. And I guess I don't know if it's more out of, hey, we're a party, so we have to help him, or if they have like connections, like the characters. I don't know, but it's just good of your players to be like, yeah, we're gonna help you solve this.
They just like each other. Like the characters all like enjoy working together, basically. So
Yeah,
they care if one of them dies.
yeah, because that honestly that could backfire if it was like is there like a bounty for this person, or do they just marked for death?
It's not really a bounty. It's like whoever kills him gets to join the Assassin's Guild.
Well, and that's good too, because what I was going to say is like if it was just like a price on his head and you had a character who was just more like chaotic, they could try to like go against the party and like turn him in or something.
Yeah.
So
which I probably could have turned into something interesting as well, but
I mean there's always ways to like work around players doing unexpected things. So then what is the answer here is just like it is okay to nudge them.
Yeah, it's okay to nudge them.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, there's always the obligatory, like, just talk to them about it.
Right.
Just say, hey, I feel like you guys are struggling. Well, not even like, don't say like you are struggling. Just say,
you're bad at D&D.
I've noticed that you aren't picking up on threads that I'm laying down.
Right.
Do you not see them, or are they just not interesting to you?
Yeah, that's super important because it's, maybe Derek's problem is clarity of these quest hooks.
Yeah.
They just want them to
I
do
get how
more.
it can feel like kind of, for lack of a better word, even though I really hate this, it can feel kind of cringe to feel like you're making your plots so obvious.
Yeah.
That's something that I have problems with too.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to.
Yeah. And sometimes, and again, like obviously that's what a lot of people just want.
And even if you feel like you're cringily making something too obvious, if your players are like not very good at observing plot hooks, it's probably not as obvious to them as you think it is.
Yeah. Well said.
Thanks.
Should we move on to a different one?
Yeah, let's find another one.
Cool.
Oh, can I go stir my chili?
Stir the chili. I'll scan. All right, Graceful Destroyer is in here because she's stirring chili. I could give away all of her Grace World destroying secrets right now. Maybe it's in the chili. I shouldn't whisper. That's too weird. Okay, let's see. Making travel feel dangerous and interesting and really selling the passage of time. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that's something that I have a problem with too, though. Though I did read something on Reddit today that I'm considering doing, so we can talk about that, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Making travel feel dangerous / exciting and really selling the passage of time. That second part, I feel like we could take a couple different directions, but the first part seems pretty straightforward. Making travel feel dangerous / interesting. What do you think? What jumps to mind?
What I read today on Reddit said the best way to make travel feel dangerous is to only allow long rests in safe, defensible locations.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, they can only have a long rest if they are in an area where they don't need a watch at night and they have access to food, water, and medical supplies. The way they explained it was the long rest is the strongest weapon in your player's arsenal.
I agree with
and they're
that,
right.
yeah.
Because the ability to just like lie down for 8 hours and regenerate all of
your abilities and health,
heal all your wounds, just like completely refill your mana pool or whatever is ridiculous.
Yes.
I might do this because I like to have travel encounters, but I don't like when my players just like slap them out of the way.
Right.
And that just kind of makes it feel pointless to me.
Exactly.
So it doesn't feel dangerous and it doesn't feel interesting.
Well, yeah, travel feels very monotonous, even if you plan interesting encounters along the way, because if they are, presumably, for travel, you're not going to throw a lot at them at once. Like maybe it is one big encounter, but you're not going to have a day with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when they're just fully charged every day, they can still pretty easily take out whatever you put in front of them every day. And then each day of travel is just like, what are we going to fight next? So after, it can get really monotonous.
Yeah. So if it became more about like managing their resources better. And the other thing that I've done without having to go more into like grittier resting rules is steer away from combat encounters and more toward social encounters, especially if they're on a traveled road. It doesn't really make sense for there to be like, I don't know, a bunch of trolls or whatever just randomly on the road.
Trolls should be at the bridge.
Yeah. Particularly in my setting where there's just not a ton of those things like monsters and stuff wandering around.
Yeah. And so besides just combat and social, obviously during travel, this is the time when you need to have cool, dangerous, just like environmental things happening. This is the time when the weather matters too. If it's raining a lot, are some of their supplies going to get ruined like while they're traveling? If they get caught in some kind of, I don't know, if the road is washed out and they have a cart, maybe that's a different subject because not a lot of parties actually bother to buy mounts and stuff these days.
Both of my parties have carts right now.
Well, there you go. Take out the road.
If I took out the road, I would literally kill a player.
What?
Because the one has to dunk himself in water every 4 hours. And he'd be okay during the storm, but after?
Yeah. I mean, the point is, it's just like a little obstacle for them to be like, okay, how do we get this stuff across? And then maybe they'll have to divert from the road where there would be more monsters or something. So travel is also where you just need to have the environment being a monster too. Even though they're really powerful, like they're not more powerful than the literal like forces of nature. Most of the time.
Yeah, they will be eventually.
they are after like level 10, so whatever. That's when D&D breaks anyway.
Yeah. As for the passage of time, though.
Yeah, so this is the interesting part. Like, what do you take them to mean by that?
Just like, I guess, if you are having a long travel segment, say they need to travel for like 3 weeks somewhere, how do you make it feel like it's been a long journey?
Well, I think something that I think exists in older editions, I know it exists to some degree in Five Torches Deep, is the idea, specifically for dungeons, but this can also be done for travel. It's called like rolling to return, where rather than literally playing out your like trek back through a dungeon, you would just roll to see what the results are like. So you can kind of fast forward through it, but then see how well you handled whatever challenges happened. So you could still lose some resources. You could depending on how you wanted to do it, you could literally have like characters come out with less HP or like some exhaustion or something. And combined with what you said, I think that, of limiting the long resting, I think that could be a useful tool. And just sell that idea that like, hey, that travel was hard, even if we didn't make you hate it as a player by like just being bored with a bunch of encounters or something.
I've also been tracking the days. Like in my story notes, I put how many days have passed in that session and how many days have passed total.
Yeah. I like to do that in all my campaigns too. There have only been a few times, I feel like, when it's actually been useful, because I will sometimes plan like, okay, by X date, this faction is going to do this. But overall, like, I don't know, that's another funny thing from like old school D&D, because there's like a famous line in the DMG over here where in like all caps, it's something along the lines of, you cannot have a meaningful campaign if detailed time records are not kept. But the idea is that you would actually have multiple like parties probably playing in the same world. So it's really important to know when those adventuring parties are doing different things and who's clearing this part of the dungeon, whatever. So like, is the loot going to be there?
Yeah. I love the idea of a dual campaign where you have two parties like in different places at the same time. But yeah, I just don't know how that's actually feasible.
Yeah, well in modern D&D, I think it's like, because the characters are more like the main characters of a story, I don't think it's as feasible, because then it's like you have 10 main characters if you have two parties. Like, that's too many people. In older school D&D, it worked because the characters were less like superheroes, basically. I mean, regardless, I took this idea of the passage of time as also just like downtime and stuff too, because that's something else that I think I really want to do in my games, is like when you go to town, just really trying to, like they said, kind of sell the idea of like, hey, your characters are going to want to just rest in town for a while. And maybe it would require that idea of like, you can't really get a long rest until you're just in civilization for a bit. Because when the party does just go so fast from one dangerous place to another and like gain a bunch of levels in a few days or weeks of game time, that just feels like a little, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I do, and have for a long time, really liked those gritty realism rules in the DMG that specifically say that a long rest just takes like 7 or maybe it's 10 days of rest, and one night is a short rest, I believe.
I think the problem with that is it really encourages warlocks. Like, if you're a warlock, then you basically, it's the same.
Oh, well, yeah, then you regain everything on a day, though,
Yeah.
instead of, I mean, still, it's harder for everybody.
It's harder, but I would definitely just choose to be a warlock in a campaign like that, basically.
This is a good reminder, because that really does, there's the whole thing about like, oh, you need to have like 6 to 8 encounters a day.
Who
like in
does
5e,
that?
no one does that, and
every
this is just
single
such
session would be so
this
long.
is just such a big reminder to me that like, wow, resting is really like the problem in 5e. Like the answer to a lot of my complaints, which is that characters are like too powerful, too superhero-y, and you can basically take that away by just changing how resting works.
The Reddit post that I was talking about earlier literally said, "You're not going to like it, but this will solve every problem in your campaign."
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Players will hate it. Depending on their style. If they also want a game that feels more dangerous, then that's the way to do it for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind more of a resource management type game.
I love that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't like played one in a long time, I feel like, but like since I guess Out of the Abyss or something even, but we still got to rest a lot then. I didn't do resource management
very well.
I think we tracked, I don't know, I was tracking rations, but yeah.
It didn't matter once you got a culinary bard.
Oh yeah, you're right.
You could just create food out of thin air.
Yeah, good thing I was no longer a ranger at that point.
You hadn't been a ranger since the first session.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, what was I going to say then? Does this tie in well to the other one, or am I just trying to circle back too hard? Where, okay, if we have travel feeling more dangerous, will it somehow encourage your players to take more quest
I think it would discourage them. They wouldn't want to go anywhere outside the city.
Maybe.
Which, there's something to be said for single city campaigns.
Yeah. Well, and then maybe they would at least be looking for things to do in the city.
Yeah, true.
Perfect. Another pair of problems solved instantly over the course of like 20 minutes. Because that's just what we do on this podcast. Side note here, I've been thinking about renaming the podcast.
I've never really liked the name.
You never liked the name?
Fully honest.
What should it be?
BOBCAST.
Well, that's...
What are you changing it to?
I don't know. But I've just been thinking because originally, you know, it was going to be like me, sometimes you on here, sometimes other creators. But,
no, only me.
But yeah, that's the thing. If it is you and me consistently, we're like basically co-hosts. It feels stupid having it just named after me.
The BOBCAST.
Not bad.
It's worse.
It's a little worse.
But that's what I'm going for, because I seek only to tear down what you build.
Yeah, maybe we'll let the people vote, or that'll be the next community post.
Podcast McPodcast.
Well, it's not going to be purely, I'm just asking for suggestions, not actually getting the people to create and decide the name, because that could be catastrophic. I don't think it would. All right, let's eat some chili. You can't just burp and then make a bunch of mouth sounds. This is a podcast. All right, keep building.
Stop building.
Keep building.
Stop building.
Stop
doing it. Don't do it.